Hey guys, NJ here. Hope you're all doing great. Today we're having a look at the Happy Model Larva X, which is 100mm. I guess, what class do we call this? Either the Toothpick class or the sub-micro, I guess, if micros are your kind of standard 2.5-inch mini quad or little baby quad. These are the kind of whoop conversion style quads that are ever so popular at the minute. So this probably geared more towards racing and zipping around very fast everywhere. But Happy Model they've brought out some good stuff in the past, some of which I've reviewed, obviously things like the Mobula and various other quadcopters, but this one I thought I would take a look at just because it's good to see more in this class that are small, stable, fast, quiet, safer. You know, they're all good things really. But as I said on my live stream the other day, if you didn't catch that, I'll just run over some of the things that I mentioned on there. This one, when it turned up, was DOA. So yeah, dead on arrival. My particular problem with this one was I had a bad gyro that was just picking up two axes. I didn't have any roll axis movement at all, which of course I spotted the second I plugged it in. It wouldn't have done much if I went to arm it, and I hadn't already checked that, but of course you should always check these things anyway. So I managed to get hold of another one of these flight controllers. The flight controller is the Crazy Bee F4 Pro version 3. Which is this is the FR model, so compatible with FreeSky, and it will actually take 2 to 4S battery input, but this is only rated for up to 3S, and that's mainly down to the motors being at 7,000 kV. If you wanted to run 4S through this, really the kind of max kV you want on the motors is probably, I guess, around 5,000 kV. Any higher than that and you're going to strain them, possibly burn them out on 4S. But I think all these toothpicks should be geared to around 2S, and then 3S really is kind of the super sports mode to run these on. I think when you start getting into 4S, really you're just talking about sort of heading up to the proper 2.5-inch micro quads. But anyway, I got a replacement of this board, and this one turned up, and the antenna was fine, but I was getting no more than about 4 meters of range, which was obviously incredibly frustrating and disappointing. So that one had a duff receiver in it. I just a bit of reviewer's curse going on with this one. Anyway, I went ahead and soldered this in anyway, and decided to fit an XM Plus in there, which is why you can see the routing here and the two antennas out the two corners here, giving me 90 degrees of diversity, which is a good thing anyway. It's always the XM Plus is such a solid little receiver. Obviously we sacrifice some telemetry, but I'll happily do that to get the range. You can still flash an XM Plus to give you the RSSI, so that's no problem. You can have that display in the OSD. So yeah, that's what I did with this one. Now, in terms of what else you get with this guy, there is a Diamond VTX, which is this little half-size triangle VTX that's up in here, and I actually really like this. It's a nice VTX. It gives you 25, 100 and 200 milliwatts of power. It connects up to the main board via a TX UART line, so you can obviously do the Betaflight OSD switching. Little heads up, obviously that's all changing now from Betaflight 4.1 forward. Will be the thing with the VTX table, which I actually have programmed on this. It's not as difficult as you may think. You may think this is a whole new pain, but we'll get more onto that in another video. But yeah, the Diamond VTX, I really like the fact that it's got an onboard DVR. That's a really nice touch. Gives you 1280 by 720 resolution, 30 FPS ish, 25 to 30. It's somewhere around there. But it's a nice picture, and I think it's a nice little addition. It's worth the extra gram of having that on there on the Diamond VTX, just to have a nice clean video of your flights. The only thing I will say, and I'll put some flight footage in here as we're talking so you can see, it does occasionally drop frames, and I know people have been complaining about that. It's not end of the world does it every 10 seconds, but just once in a while you'll notice there'll be the odd drop frame. I think some people have been fine, not had it at all, but I certainly have, and I know of others who have. But it's not flight ruining, shall we say. There's just the odd clip that you might need to snip out or do a hard cut if you're putting some footage together. It's nothing that upset me too much, but just be aware that those things have been reported, and I have experienced them. So the VTX is good. The camera is, rather than a generic non-specified camera, this is a Runcam Nano 2 camera, so it's a proper branded Runcam, and for its size, yeah, it's pretty decent. Obviously it's a small 3rd-inch CMOS sensor in there, very tiny camera, and you know, it lets in a reasonable amount of light. It does a decent job on the DVR picture, and it was perfectly usable in most light conditions. You'll see it struggled a little bit, as many of these super tiny low light into the sensor cameras will do, under certain lighting conditions like sunset or where the sun's very low, and you'll see from some of my footage where you do get a little bit of that, but on the whole, under most lighting conditions, it was perfectly acceptable. And again, it's nothing I felt like I had to change out. Sometimes I do change the camera out if that becomes a problem with me. I've done that with various models in the past, but it really doesn't bother me. I'm fine with that, just the way it is. Further bits and pieces on the flight controller. You can get this for Fly Sky Ready, as well as FR Sky Ready if you're going to go with the built-in receiver. As I said, I was forced out of the option to use that on both occasions in the end. But you can also get it pre-wired with the XM Plus in, also DSM-X for the Spectrum guys, and also a TBS if you guys want to do the Crossfire thing. So that's really cool, and it's nice to have the extra range. Another reason why I wasn't too upset about putting an XM Plus in this, you've got a VTX in here that can go up 200 milliwatts, therefore you can push the range. The standard built-in receiver, whether you're using it in D8 or D16, when they're just wired straight off the board down here, there's no good routing options for them. You could extend it up and out the way, but generally speaking, your range is limited far shorter than your video is. So if you want to make use of anything over 25 milliwatts, then I would suggest going with something like the XM Plus or Crossfire or whatever you want to go with, which offers some form of diversity or decent range, be that via long band of Crossfire or whatever. The Crazy BF4 Pro that's in here, the V3, as well as I've talked about the voltage. It also has an F4 in it, which is pretty standard now. It's the main CPU or MPU that Betaflight is supporting now, and this is on the latest. I think it's on RC5 and flying very nicely. You do have a 10 amps, 40 amps, 10 amps per ESC built into this board, with a burst of 12 amps with each, but there was no noise in the picture, plenty of headroom on the ESCs. That all felt really good, so no real complaints there either. In terms of the this thing of aesthetics, I mean, this open frame design, I'm of mixed opinion about it. I'm not sure I like it that much, as opposed to just having the straight arms coming out. I find the straight arms simpler. They interfere with the airflow a lot less. And also, I think, to be honest with you, my biggest gripe with this is the thickness of this frame. I just think it's ended up making this whole thing a little bit too porky. It's a bit too overweight. And all the signs are there for me of a Pico at this size that is overweight. It's drawing a little too much. The flight times are a little too short. The power is there. These motors are doing a good job, and I can see they've dropped, this KV. A lot of these models I've seen with higher KVs than this, 7,000 KV was probably about right spec'd for this weight. I think it's actually, we can do some weights in a minute, but it just feels to me like the weight is working against it. And I don't feel that these things need to be incredibly strong. It's better to keep it lighter, have low mass, have low inertia, that will protect it from a crash. So keeping it light at this level, I think, does it more favours than trying to beef up the frame. And as I said, things like this, you may end up making an incredibly stiff, thick frame, and that will work to the advantage of being strong and thick. But when the frame doesn't flex at all, and something of this amount of mass, it just won't in a crash, it will just transfer that energy somewhere else, and it will take it out on something like the canopy. They do give you 2 canopies in the box, so that's good. But that's where I think this is going to fall over. I think things are going to start breaking up here far easier. So, you know, it's swings and roundabouts, as they say. But if you look at something like the Tiny Hawk, you can see this is much more sensible in terms of frame thickness. I'll try and get these two a little bit closer together where you can see it. It's a bit tricky, but you can hopefully see how much thicker this Larva X frame is, where it's really unnecessary. This is stiff, this barely moves, and it's, you know, it's just got that tiny bit of flex, which is perfect for the weight and inertia. It doesn't need to be any more than that, and I think they've just gone a bit overkill here. And as I've mentioned before, I just think this frame design, I feel like there's something that's causing problems with the tuning in the design of this frame. I particularly dislike, and this is where the aesthetic design has come in, and someone in marketing has gone, let's give it arrowheads, it'll look really cool, and the guy in engineering who's engineering this whole thing has probably put his hand on his forehead going, please don't do stupid things like this. But this arrowhead or fishhook head or whatever you want to call it is just, I mean, this thing's going to get stuck in branches anyway, but now it's got some extra help to get stuck in branches. I think that's just a terrible idea. These are plenty wide enough to protect the motor. If you did get this model, I would suggest getting a Dremel and just getting rid of these. There's enough, and it's the same for these holes here. But any kind of branches or leaves or anything goes through here, and this thing's going to get hooked. I mean, this quad might as well be a giant ball of spider silk if it goes anywhere near a tree. So be careful where you fly. Don't fly around trees that you might not be prepared to climb to rescue this quad, because it is going to stick to things pretty easily. So regarding the performance, I thought the power was good. It needs a strong battery without a doubt. In fact, the battery that kind of worked best for me was this one, this 450 milliamp 75C3S by Tattoo. Nice, strong, high C rating, sustains the voltage well. The interesting thing I found was that this performed better, or the tuning was more stable with this than the kind of shorter, fatter, flat battery like this, where more of the weight is closer to the centre of gravity. This, when this is loaded in, puts more weight across the pitch axis, but that actually gave this a bit of stability. I found this guy to be a little bit, I wouldn't say unstable, but it was a bit twitchy, a little bit tricky to tune. As I said, I can't quite put my finger on it yet, and I'm going to keep working on it to try and suss it out, but perhaps something to do with the airflow going around this. I was really careful in when I reassembled this to make sure that everything floated nicely. There's no vibrations. It was all really good. There's kind of no real reason for it to be doing what it's doing. But again, I'm not the first person to report the twitchy weirdness that some people are having with this frame. I know Andy RC, when I spoke to him, he had some similar problems with his. Equally, I know a few people have had good experiences with them, so I don't know. I can't put my finger on it. This one did come with the HQ props. Now, I chose to put on a set of the 2.5 Avan Emax props because they are just my favourite micro prop, and they always give me good performance across all the quads I try them on. So it was a non-variable for me that I knew I could rely on, but I will try this at some point on other props. So, do I recommend it? Well, I've not had the best experience with this just because I had some DOA components, but, you know, that happens to all of us. There are people out there that always get stuff turn up and it's slipped through QC and there's been a problem, so I'm not going to hold that against it. Sometimes that just happens, but now I've got it flying. I think it's okay. It's fun. I did crash it a few times. It held up, but where I fly, fields, there's mud, there's grass, that kind of environment. I haven't really smashed this or really put it under any stress. As I said, at least they put another one in there. The flight control is decent, good headroom, no noise in the feed from the ESC, so that whole flight control board's really cool, definitely worth using. I do recommend thinking carefully about your receiver choice, and if you want to make use of that 200 milliwatts, then get something with diversity or of a decent range that you know will work, like the Crossfire. Motor choice is good for this, but I do feel like this quad is a little bit overweight, and I think that's the biggest problem. Now, what I will be doing with this is I have ordered a Mode 2 Toothpick frame, which is lighter, slimmer, and has a more traditional, you know, 4-post design and layout. So what I'm going to do is, because I think all these components will actually do really well, but to see whether this frame could be the problem for me, I'm going to swap all this out into that Mode 2 frame and see how it does, because I like all the electronics I've got here to play with. So as all these toothpicks come in this diamond formation thing, it should just drop straight on. Obviously unplug and replug the motors, nice and easy. So yeah, I'm going to drop that into that frame and do that maybe within the next couple of days, so look for a rebuild video of this, and then we'll go out and see how that does. But yeah, you've had some flight footage. There are my thoughts. I think it's decent, it's a nice offering, but I do think for me it's a little porky. You will need a strong battery, and there are some design elements of this that I would personally not have done. So if you were to ask me, out of this and the Tiny Hawk Freestyle, which one I'd choose, or which one would get picked up and put into my bag to go and fly, despite the fact this is 2S, this is 3S, for me personally, every time it's going to be this one. Yes, this is faster, yes, this has more power, but this flies so damn well, and it's so much fun and flies big and awesome. So I mean, for me it's this one. That's subjective, that's down to you as to what you like, and who knows, once I reframe this might become the new favourite. So we'll see. You've hopefully got an idea of where I stand on this one anyway. So that about does it for now. Leave me a comment, say hello. It's always good to chat to you, and you know I read all of your comments and I respond to everyone as best I can. Please don't forget that I have a Discord server, and I'll put a link to that in the description, so come along and join in. There's a great community there. A lot of my Patreons are there. We all chat and help out, especially with tech support, and it's somewhere you can get to me pretty easily. I will have affiliate links for this in the description. If you do want to pick one up, please consider using that. It won't cost you anything, but it will give me a little kickback, help me run the channel. And whether you buy this or the Tiny Hawk or anything, if you go via those links, it will help me out. So thank you very much, guys. I look forward to catching up with you in the comment section, and I'll see you very soon in the next one. Cheers.